All right, reflecting on Saturday night's game, anytime you get a win on the road, that's really positive. I think there was really moments of dominance on both sides of the ball. Certainly an extended period of dominance on the defensive side. Offensively, we moved the ball, drives 2 and 3. I think we had 29 plays combined in those two drives and a ton of yards, and we had 3 points. So the positive thing is I thought from that point forward, the offense scored 4 of its next 6 opportunities, opened up a 27-3 lead, and then defensively, I don't think it was that we let up by any means. They made a few plays. In particular, the quarterback made a few throws on that drive, and then we turn around, we fumble in 2 plays, and then within a 7-minute time period on the clock, they scored 14 points, and then another response was needed, and we got the kickoff return past midfield, and the offense was able to open it back up to 17 points. So a lot that can be learned from on Saturday night. A lot of good things. We maybe just weren't quite as sharp as a whole, and we weren't sharp at the same time. I think sometimes that's the way the game goes. You think back to Idaho State, both sides of the ball were sharp right from the get-go. We open up a lead. That creates just a different look and feel of the game. And this one, it was a little bit slower go, and that's the way the game of football goes from time to time. So I did appreciate how our guys responded through that, and again, I think a lot to learn from and a lot to grow from that performance. Against a program I think that's really improved in Cal Poly. Looking forward to Northern Colorado, a lot of the same improvement is what you see on film. They're a team that in Coach Lamb's years now, I think has continued to let's say do it the right way. Recruit high school, develop those guys. A lot of the same guys. You can see their roles changing, their level of play changing, through their time, and they've been in games, they've been competitive, they've won games, all those things, and we're going to have to go down there and play well, and there's no doubt about that. And in particular offensively, they can light it up, and they have done that pretty quick. Gibson's a real quality quarterback that they're throwing it more than they're running it, but he's athletic enough to extend plays, and then his ability to find the open guy or even the not so open guy, and they can make plays with Cheeks and Monroe. They use their backs and their tight ends really well in the passing game. They got a couple good backs that they, when they do want to run the ball, they can in Price and Johnson. So offensively, they're putting up yards certainly, and then their points have maybe been a little, inconsistent to land them in that 24-25 range as far as their average, but they're capable of scoring a bunch of points. And defensively, their average is right around that 24-25 range as well. They're big up front. They play a lot of guys. Linebackers are active. In Cam Chapa, they certainly have one of the better safeties in the conference for sure. So again, they're a team that I think to this point has been very competitive. You don't want to allow them, to build confidence. They've been able to take it away at times, and that's been an edge for them. And then they've turned it over at times too. So we got to be able to win that battle. I know they're sitting +2 right now, but when they've been on the right side of that's when they've really been effective. So we got to make it about us, but certainly got a lot of respect for what this opponent is capable of doing, and excited about another opportunity.
What growth have you kind of seen from Miles this season? Just I know he's missed some PATs earlier, but just kind of that whole kicking operation, how they've grown through the last few years.
Yeah, that was the first game in a while we made all our kicks. I know that's a positive, and I know let's call it the battery between Brody and Colby and Miles, putting that all together. That's been a process. I know, in particular, you look at what Colby did to kind of allow that high snap from Brody before the half, and then Miles being able to stick with it and just have confidence in his ability to get it up there. So I think Miles has been able to deal with the expectations, and then not meeting the expectations, and then continue just to forge ahead. I think that's probably the thing I see right now, while working with new factors in a new snapper and a new holder, and I think we knew what we were getting into with two true freshmen, and those guys are just beginning their careers, so to have these expectations that it was going to be what it was relative to Tommy snapping, and even thinking about Brendan being able to kick the ball off and punt the ball. We knew that was going to be a work in progress. So we are making progress, I guess, at the end of the day. Miles instantly became the veteran in that group, so I think there's a piece to just the leadership aspect amongst those three guys that he's certainly done a really good job. And we'll really need that group to be dialed in and consistent as we continue to go on. And that's that's not something we've achieved yet, I think, is this game where you look and say that was a really consistent performance across the board. Certainly getting all the place kicks made was a step. I thought after Colby's first kickoff, he really kicked the ball off pretty well as far as his placement. Didn't get a ton of opportunities to punt, and that's okay. And then, like we talked about with Brody, he had the one high snap, but otherwise he was pretty dialed in. So growth in all ends, and Miles has been, I think at the very least, the catalyst for that growth.
Any updates on the injury front? I guess we're talking.
Yeah, Taki's return. Return to activity last week, like I talked about. Return to play, I think, is still a work in progress as we go through this week. And what does that mean for him? It's not all of a sudden we got to snap our fingers and he's out there playing 50, 60 plays. It's our hope that we can get to this weekend and he can have a role. So that's still to be determined through the course of the week. But that's certainly our hope that we get to that place. And then otherwise, we didn't sustain anything new out of that game, which again is a positive way to leave that game.
Coach, you called Saturday's win methodical yet messy. What are some things you're hoping to clean up this week ahead of Northern Colorado?
Well, the point to that comment, I think methodical is okay. I mean, if you can possess the ball and grind it out, but it's really hard. It's hard to go on 15-plus play drives and, have that happen over and over again and expect points. It just but there's a methodical nature to what our offense can be too, and that's the benefit is as long as you're putting points up, you're really having a chance to grind a team down, and your defense is over on the sideline. But then when the methodical doesn't execute and execute into points or end up in points, I should say, then you look and say, well, why did we get there? There's a mess involved in that. So how can we improve upon that? We didn't make any really big plays in the passing game. That has to be an element of our offense, and I shouldn't say it has to be. It's certainly a benefit if it is. And we didn't have that, so that's certainly a way to remove the methodical a little bit and get that ball going down the field. Certainly the penalty piece, we had 3 pre-snap penalties. That's gonna look and feel messy each and every time. I know additionally we had a hold on a first down. So I think it's just some of those things. It's not that our guys aren't out there working hard. It's not that they're not out there practicing the way we want to practice. But it's being focused in every moment. It's understanding situations. It's we obviously prefer not to turn the ball over at all. Those types of things. So it wasn't that it was a million miles off. We still scored 34 points. We still had a rushing day where we approached 300 yards. But I think our expectations are such that we do finish off those long drives with 7 points versus just getting 3 the one time. We do convert on 4th and short when we're down in the red zone, given that opportunity. So it's not this urban renewal that we need, but okay, next time out there, we got to be a little sharper.
On the offensive line front, how did you feel like they kind of handled their mixed fronts and different looks?
No, I thought we did a good job up front. With what they force you to, at times you get you get overextended in the zone game. But I thought our guys really did a good, because that creates a real challenge for the backside, cutting some things off. And I thought we did a good job of getting paired up. I know they wanted to bring a lot of different linebacker pressure, and we weren't letting unblocked guys through again. I think that's the one thing. We had some difficulties on the edge a few times, and I think that's where a few of our maybe our losses came. But ultimately, I think up front, our communication, our ability to get on guys in some challenging situations was really pretty good. I know their linebackers again piled up a lot of tackles, but I wonder how many of those tackles were on 5 and 6 yard plus gains. That's just the way football works. When you cover the front up, you get those guys matched up. Your linebackers are free for a reason. But where are those tackles happening? And I know a lot of them were beyond efficiency for us. Saying that's a 4 yard plus gain. So generally pleased with the offensive line. Again, clean up the pre-snap penalties, eliminate the hold, continue to communicate at a high rate, continue to be physical. Certainly the fourth and short play was a disappointing play where we just probably weren't physical enough in that particular chance. But for the most part, again, an effort that you can see, that we're figuring it out.
The team really embraced Jared when he had that touchdown. I guess just his career, he went in the portal, he came back, just the overall, his contribution to the team.
Yeah, I think it's remaining positive and ready. When he was, he was given opportunity to come back. I think he knew the depth chart wasn't going to be all that different. Meaning, Julius was coming back and healthy. Adam was coming back off the year he had. Colson was coming back. So, stay positive. Be that kind of team member, and that's what he's been. I know he. This is where he wanted to be. It doesn't mean just by coming back you're going to be granted all these opportunities, but when you have an opportunity, make the most of it. And I think he certainly did that, and then some. On Saturday with one play for a score, and he's proven to be a very versatile back over time. Especially catching the ball in the backfield. And we've at the same time we've stayed healthy at that spot. So those opportunities for he and Colson are limited, and that's just the way it stands right now. It doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. So, to describe that situation again, I'd say, be as positive as you can. Value being a member of this team and be ready. And I commend Jared for doing that.
And then you mentioned physicality. Julius just seems to be really good at that second level and getting extra yards. Is that what you're kind of seeing this season from him?
Yeah, and I think that's the way it looked back in 23 too. We just didn't get a chance to see him very much last year, and it was that second half of Davis in the first quarter against Montana. You said, okay, there it is again. And I think for him, getting back, I suppose, in a little bit of a rhythm through the first stretch, because we didn't contact him at all in the spring and the fall. So there probably was just a touch of transition, but I think he's using all his tools right now. He used the hurdle again, which he landed, so that's 2 in a row that he's landed, which isn't awesome, but looks awesome, I know. But he ran over a couple guys, ran through tackles, and the more tools he has downfield, he becomes a real problem, to be able to tackle. So I'm excited about his production the other night, and again, combining him and Adam as our tandem, I think we really like where we're at with those two guys.
As his return, longest in a couple of years for you guys, and seemed at a pretty crucial moment in the game too. Just his continued ability in that. What can you say about it?
Yeah, he definitely is a guy that, as a young player, has proven to be a gamer, and most of those opportunities have come on the offensive side. But you knew that over time, just kickoff return game is few and far between. We're not allowing the team to kick off a whole lot, which is great. A lot of these kids can kick the ball in the end zone. So him even remaining patient has been a challenge. He takes that ball out from about 7 deep, which was a fine return, but you're starting 7 deep, and we're only getting the ball to the 24-yard line. So he fair caught the next one. It wasn't the right opportunity. So that in itself is growth. And then when we needed it and it presented itself, that's the key. We needed it and it presented itself. He made the most of it. And just like any returns that Taco would get, Jabez would be the same thing. Hey, the other 10 guys were doing their job. But then he's got, I think, unique ability to be able to see things, hit things in the kick return game, and then make people miss. So, it's our hope when those opportunities continue to present themselves, he can do something with it, and when they don't, he makes the correct decisions.
And Miles mentioned kind of good scheme on that return as well. Is there anything that you've seen from Coach Monaco that to be able to block up some of those returns?
Well, I think it's two things. It's knowing what we can do. It's having a couple returns in the bag each game, because anymore with the sideline tablets and everything, once you show in your hand, it's a lot easier to recover on the other side. So yeah, that was an alternative return on that one. Guys, again, you got to be able to sort a lot of things out as a blocker in the kick return game. So keeping that piece simple. Our investment in kick return from week to week is varying based on what we think the kicker can do. So I think we felt like there would be a few chances in that game. It's a good job to getting that lined up and really our guys knowing what they're doing.
You mentioned Gibson earlier. I think he's second in the conference in pass attempts and pass yardage. I guess just what have you seen from him in that passing attack, and is able to spread it out?
Yeah, I think it comes down to a few things. He's definitely capable of making, quick decisions. Seeing coverage, man zone, seeing matchups. And not afraid to go after the matchups. I think, in particular, when you look at Cheeks in the one-on-one game, he's going to go after those scenarios, and they've made quite a few of those. But then you flip it around, if teams want to play zone, he's going to get the ball to his hands and get it completed. And they do a good job again of using their tight ends and their backs. So the ball isn't just going to, say, Cheeks and Monroe, the top two pass catchers, but they are capable of hitting big plays with those two. They got good players. That's part of it. I think he's capable of making quick decisions. I think he's capable of extending plays, and all that adds up to having a productive passing game, which they certainly do. Yeah, when your free safety's leading you in tackles, you know that he's covering some ground, and they're getting him involved in different ways at the same time. So he's really good open field tackler. He's a player that you can tell has really good instincts. And I think another defense where if you say, okay, do they know what they're doing? Yes. Do they play really hard? Yes. I think those are the two things. So they're sound within their scheme. They play really hard, and that in itself is allowed them to play really solid defense, and I think really effective at times for sure. And he's certainly a big piece to that, because when you talk about eliminating big plays, your play on the back end, in particular free safety, he's a key player in that.
They've given up a decent amount of rushing yards. What do you see from them, kind of, especially up front, that maybe has led to that?
Well, they don't. They're not going to overwhelm you with numbers. So I think they're a little bit of let's make the offense go the long hard way, and that's as I spoke about at the beginning with us. That's hard. Like if a defense is giving you some things, but playing kind of that bend but don't break mentality, you're going to be okay getting up some yards. So yeah, the rushing yards they've given up don't necessarily match their points. In a couple of those games where they gave some rushing yards, they took the ball away quite a bit too, and that certainly makes up for a lot of things when you take it away. So I know they play a lot of guys up front, and I don't think they're a team that's going to, some of the defensive schemes that they're going to have a bunch of lost yardage plays, but then they're going to have a bunch of big plays that break out on the other side. Is that effective defense? I don't know. It certainly looks good from a TFL perspective, but then from a big play perspective, it doesn't. I don't. They're not that. They're not taking tons of risks in their sound and their scheme, and they have they have good tacklers on the back end too. So the rushing yard is maybe this kind of bleed out rushing as opposed to just these giant runs here and there.
Are they do they mixed fronts or are they kind of 4-2-5, 3-4s?
They're 4-2-5 structurally. Yeah, as their base, I know they can get into some 3-down looks, but they're and they say they're a 4-down team, but they play with a stand-up defensive end, but they're still structurally a 4-down team.
Coach, letting up those 2 scores late, what does it say about the character and leadership of the guys to come back and get another score and kind of respond to that?
Well, I think it's a team that believes in one another, a team that isn't going to point fingers. It's about the offense doing its job to its best of its capabilities. It's the defense doing its job to the best of capabilities, and certainly we combined forces to run our special teams. So I think in that moment it was a 10-point game. I think offensively, okay, we can get this back. We just fumbled. We had scored 4 out of 6 possessions. Fumble was very unfortunate, but it happened. Defensively, we didn't get the sudden change off the fumble, because that was still, the ball was at midfield. It wasn't like it was, down in the red zone or anything. So, hey, we just, the offense has to pick the defense up in that moment. Just like, through the beginning stages of that game, the defense, was picking up the offense. So I think that's the way you want your team to react. Obviously, you don't want either side to have to pick the other side up if it's going really well, but it's going to naturally happen that way. And all these teams are structured in their own right. What's their strength, and that's, so how we match up offense versus defense, defense versus offense dictates even how that has to play out in a particular game. So it says a lot, I guess, to your question, and that's kind of been the way I think we've played off one another throughout the course of most of the regular season here, and we'll certainly need that as we head down the stretch.
Obviously, it'd be great to win every game by 50, but do you think there's value in being in a situation like that and needing a response and then getting it?
I think so. Whether it's going back a few weeks to Northern Arizona, they take an early lead and we have to, continue to just hang in there and believe. And, this game where it was a little bit of a early struggle for the offense to get points on the board. It wasn't an early struggle to move the ball, but it was an early struggle to get points. Okay, just hang in there. It'll work. Defensively, to have a moment there where all of a sudden it just didn't all work out. I think those harden you, I guess, in moments that we hope to get to down the road in big games. How do you respond when it doesn't work out your way is such a telling factor in the game of football. So we'll take it, we'll chalk it up. We didn't want it, but it happened, and we responded well, and that's kind of how I look at it.
Coulter, do you have anything?
Yeah, Coach, can you hear me okay?
Gotcha.
When it comes to just the way Northern Colorado's been able to rebuild their program, what have you thought of as sort of the discipline that goes into that? Because Coach Lamb sort of talked about that early on. Hey, we're going to recruit high school guys. We're probably going to take our lumps, but it seems like 3 years in, sort of turn the corner.
Well, credit to Coach Lamb, because it wasn't about face for sure, with how things compared to how things had been done the previous couple years. And I think clear that they hired a guy that had been a head coach, had a plan, and as an administration, just said, okay, go work your plan. And, we want to see progress, I'm sure, but in this day and age, progress isn't always allowed to take shape. And so they're reaping the benefits of that. They keep getting better and better. You look at their roster where they're, it's like any team. It is a mix, but it leans way more heavy to kids that have come up through their system and that are all of a sudden these developed guys that you don't see that on every roster. A lot of it's like, where did that guy come from? Well, Cheeks has been in their system. He's just become a better and better player. Running back Price in their system, better and better player. I know Chop is a younger player, but he's been in their program. And that, you see that a lot more than you see guys that have come from all over the place. So again, Coach Lamb is a proven head coach and has a plan, and I'm sure first and foremost he was the one that said, I'm going to stick to this plan, and we're going to see progress, and we're going to identify what it looks like, and continue to get better and better. So credit to him, and I think they're young men for continuing to develop and believe in what Coach Lamb is teaching them.
What are some of the challenges of this trip? Just going to Greeley, playing at Nottingham Field, et cetera.
Well, we'll see what the environment's like. I know it hasn't always been great as far as just fans in the stands. I know we have a good following there, a lot of alumni down in the Denver metro area, so that's real positive. I think we love the fact it's a noon game versus the 5 o'clock Pacific kickoff from last weekend. Relatively easy trip as far as staying in our time zone as well. So I think it's just again, our guys really valuing the opportunity. I know the guys that were on the trip a few years back. We did struggle, and why did we struggle? I think it had more to do with their players and their ability than the environment. So we can never make it about the environment. We got to be able to take on whatever presents itself to us, whether that's the opponent, the environment, the weather, anything like that, and bring our best. So excited for it. Again, I'll be honest, quick with that noon kick, and I know I'd much rather have it that way than waiting around all day.
I wanted to ask about Talon Marsh. Stuber's going to write something about it later on this week. So a guy that was so highly regarded in high school, what were some of the challenges he had to overcome his first couple of years, and what's helped lead him to being a more consistent contributor for you now?
Well, I'd say Talon doesn't have prototypical size. Height for sure, and that's it's just what it is what it is. So, he had to put on the right type of weight. He was plenty strong. I mean, he's one of our stronger guys, pound for pound. But I think the biggest thing is just he could play however he wanted to in high school and wreak havoc. That was just the way, and he did. He played his tail off, both sides of the football. You don't get Gatorade Player of the Year being a lineman and not be a real force. So he was that. But learning how to play within who he is at the college level, and that's being very refined. It isn't just going out there and doing whatever you want to do, and you're just going to naturally wreak havoc. So it's okay. I for him, understanding I am my height. I have the arms that are this length, I should say. How do I do this? And so it's taking coaching. It's seeing that too, seeing the challenges that he has, but also seeing the advantages that he has too, because he's got the leverage advantage. He's certainly a strong guy, relatively speaking. He is quick. So it's a transition for a lot of guys. It's what allowed me to dominate at the high school level. I got to be able to fine tune, and that takes some time, and it takes opportunity getting out there and probably living it a little bit. And he did that a little bit last year, and he had a really good spring as far as taking his technical side of things to another level. And I think he's become a real trusted guy who's playing behind one of the better players in our conference, in Paul. And Paul, I think, hopefully Paul's a little bit different body type, but Paul had the same. All our inside guys, all our defensive linemen for that matter, have had that issue of, okay, I got to play differently than I did in high school. I could just go and I could go find the ball, and that was good enough. And at the college level, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Speaking of Paul, seems like Talon has really followed Paul's leadership. It seems like Paul set a great example for Talon.
Yeah, Paul is he's what you want in a leader. He's his example, I think, has been one thing of what he's become and how hard he's worked, but I think his willingness to pour back into his teammates, I think, is what you want your leader to be. And I think he's genuine about it. It is not a forced deal whatsoever, and you got to be really intentional about that, and you got to, and I'm sure in Paul's case, look back and say, I remember when, this guy really helped me out. I want to do that for these younger players. So, yeah, Paul is very involved with all those guys in the defensive line, and he's really become a prominent leader on this team, and obviously in particular in the defensive line.
Do you think it's an adjustment for guys like Talon going from like how to gauge success? Because he had like 25 sacks his senior year. He's not going to get 25. I mean, no one's going to get 25 sacks really ever in a college season. So
Right.
is it an adjustment for those guys to sort of gauge like what is success for them?
Yeah, I think measuring your contribution, especially for our interior guys, is challenging, and you can see it in even for like Paul. He doesn't have these astronomical numbers by any means, but he is affecting the game week in and week out. And for a guy like Talon, yes, he put up ridiculous numbers, and that's where that discipline and saying, what do I have to do to make this defense work, as opposed to what do I have to do to make my own presence felt, I guess, as far as the numbers go. And a lot of times it's someone else benefiting in the stat column from me doing my job, and me doing my job really well. So I know his defensive coaches, they really try to praise that and make sure that's understood, that that's the measure of success. But at the same time, I'm sure those the guys pick up that stat sheet or whatever and want to chase some things too. And making an impact is felt in a lot of different ways. And I think learning to play within the scheme is the most effective way to make an impact, and that is certainly a challenge for all those guys.
Last one for me. Northern Colorado has thrown the ball down the field so well the last couple of weeks, particularly against Idaho. I think they had like 8 or 9 shot plays. So, how much does that concern you, and how do you go about slowing that part of their offense down?
Well, I think it's recognizing how they want to do that, making them really earn that. Flipping back to just the run pass side of things. Their attempts are about even. So making the run game as ineffective as possible. So then it becomes this one-sided thing. Because if you're going to sit and want to pass every down, that is hard. That is challenging. I know. I think we've continued to try to mix up coverage the best we can to make it harder on a quarterback to identify where those shots can come. I think you look at Cheeks in particular. He's got 50-plus catches, 800-plus yards. I know he's going to get some, but they can't be of that big play variety. I know he's gotten behind teams. 50-50 balls where the defender has fallen down after the 50-50, and he's been able to finish it off. So, yes, he can get catches. Monroe can get catches. They're tight end. They can complete some balls, but we got to eliminate how explosive those are, and then make it hard for Gibson to sit back there and really survey things. I think that's we've been able to speed quarterbacks up pretty consistently, and this is just another week where we got to be able to do that.